Juste, voilà, clique pour répondre. Clique pour répondre. Non, clique pour couper. Non, vas-y, vas-y.
Merci. Bonjour à tous. Merci de rejoindre vos sièges. Nous allons démarrer dans un instant avec l'arrivée des autorités qui vont présider cette cérémonie.
Ouais.
Bonjour à tous. Merci, chers amis photographes. Merci de rejoindre vos places, vos positions. On fait ciao, appelons. Bonjour à tous, messieurs les ministres. Monsieur Dalbangom, ministre de l'Enseignement supérieur, de la Recherche et de l'Innovation. Madame Marie-Rose Fadi Fatoufaï, secrétaire d'État auprès du Premier ministre, chargé des relations avec les institutions, porte-parole du gouvernement. Monsieur Abbas Fall, maire de Dakar. Saluer Monsieur Aïb Dafé également, président du groupe parlementaire PASTEF, député à l'Assemblée nationale. Saluer l'ensemble des personnalités présentes pour justement cette conférence sur la crise de la dette au Sénégal vers des solutions durables et progressistes, alternatives à l'approche austéritaire du FMI. C'est une question qui défraie la chronique depuis quelques mois. Hier déjà, avec le FONGIP et l'APIGA, nous parlions de la place de la dette dans la garantie financière en Afrique, avec 17 pays. Et aujourd'hui, plus que jamais, cette question interpelle les autorités, les décideurs, et les citoyens sénégalais attendent des réponses adaptées à leurs préoccupations sur cette question exactement. Je rappelle que des ouvrages sur la question sont disponibles à la porte d'entrée et que vous pourriez vous en procurer. Mesdames et messieurs, nous sommes avec des experts, des économistes, salués entre autres à l'UNTIN, président d'Africa Jom Center, le professeur Malik Sané, docteur en économie, enseignant-chercheur à l'UCAD. Saluer mon cher ami à l'UNDIAI, conseiller en communication justement au niveau de la cellule com de la présidence et l'ensemble des personnalités qui représentent les institutions de la République. Sans plus tarder, parce que nous avons le professeur Jeffrey Sachs de l'Université de Columbia aux États-Unis, économiste de renom, qui va intervenir à 11h55. Je vais demander au docteur Charles Abougré, directeur exécutif de l'Association internationale des économistes du développement, à venir prononcer le premier mot de cette cérémonie. Il sera suivi de l'intervention en ligne du professeur Jeffrey Sachs, que le Premier ministre avait d'ores et déjà rencontré avant cet événement. Alors, Charles Abougré, merci de venir prendre la parole et d'ouvrir cette cérémonie avec votre discours. You're welcome.
Your Excellencies, the Minister of Education, Research and Innovation, Mr. Dauda Ngom, Your Excellency, Minister of Health and Social Action, Dr. Ibrahim Assi, Your Excellency, Miss Marie, Your Excellency, Miss Marie Kadi Fatou Faye, Secretary of State to the Prime Minister in charge of relations with institutions and government personnel, Your Excellency Mr. Abbas Fall, Mayor of Dakar, members of the National Congress present here, officials of the government of Senegal present here, the Senator of Kenya, Mr. Omtata, former ministers and high officials attending this conference, Professor Jeffrey Sachs, who will be joining us shortly, experts, friends, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to especially acknowledge our partners in the organization of this event, particularly Trust Africa and their director, Dr. Ibrahim Assal, the Open Society Foundations, Debt Justice Coalition, Progressive International, and the Committee for the Abolition of Illegitimate Debt. I would like to thank all of you who have been here, who were since yesterday and today, the experts that are gathered here from across Africa and the world, including experts from Senegal. On behalf of IDS and the IDS Africa Network, Trust Africa, and our collaborators, I welcome you to this conference, which is under the theme, Debt Crisis in Senegal Towards Sustainable and Progressive Solutions as Alternatives to IMF's Austerity Approach. We are honored by your patronage. This conference, as you may know, was inspired by the Honorable Minister Yassine Fall at a conference that IDS Africa Network held here in Dakar at the Terubi Hotel in November last year on Africa's regional integration and African unity. During her closing address at this high-level conference, she drew our attention to the urgent and dire situation of the Senegalese debt distress and the implication, if not addressed urgently and justly, that they will have, and the impact that this will have. And if I might borrow from President Donald Trump, this impact will be rather bigly on the region and the government of the youngest government of this continent and the expectations of its people. So here we are, an audience of highly accomplished experts and practitioners drawn from across the world to help us not only better understand what Senegal is confronting, but better still, what to do about it, in order to address both the urgent fiscal strain that the government faces, but also the way to ensure inclusive growth, income growth, promote sustainable financing of Senegal's development, and ensure that Senegal's economy transforms. This government has to succeed. This young government of Senegal has to succeed, not only for Senegal, but for the continent generally, and for its young people who look up to the leadership of youth. To achieve this, the 3 days gathering, we started yesterday, which is now officially open today as a conference, is organized in three ways. Yesterday, we had a pre-expert conference, expert forum. The purpose of this forum was to ensure shared analysis, critical intellectual analysis, which is also based on country experiences. So we learned lessons. We heard from the experiences from Ghana, from Senegal itself, from Tunisia, also from Latin America, from Argentina, from Pakistan, and from Ecuador. These country experiences have been quite valuable because they informed us. Although contexts differ, there's much shared history that can lend some lessons to the Senegalese experience. We also try to understand deeply the role of the key institutions that mediate debt distress, particularly the role of the IMF and the way the IMF tackles debt distress. So we had detailed conversations about the IMF debt sustainability framework and its implications to countries like Africa and like Senegal. Today, following the official opening, the day will be devoted to solutions. So we will listen to Jeffrey Sachs, we will listen to several experts, and these experts will give us analysis, but the purpose of the analysis is to point us to what needs to be done. Tomorrow, as we conclude the conversations about what needs to be done, we would also spend the day discussing and strategizing how to approach the resolution, the networking that has to happen, the lobbying that has to happen, the mobilization that has to happen, and the advocacy that has to happen. So, Your Excellencies, gathered here is a mix of groups. People who understand the issues deeply theoretically, conceptually, people who have experienced what it takes to address these matters, but people who are experienced also in mobilizing the publics and public opinion in ensuring change. At the end of the day tomorrow, we are hoping to issue a statement, a brief statement that highlights the key issues of the discussions, the solutions that are being proposed, and the call to action, not only for Senegal, but to all who wish to see Senegal succeed. In support of the deliberations, we commissioned 12 papers. These will be available in great detail, but ahead of it, we synthesized these papers into short, punchy, clear policy briefs that are designed for policymakers with little time to read lengthy documents. But those with an appetite to read, all 12 papers would be available. This is the first major product of the conference. Second product would be the statement. Let me say a few things about Ideas and Ideas Africa Network, IDAN. For many of you who may have been hearing about it for the first time, Ideas means International Development Economics Associates. It's a network of development economies, mostly development economies, spread across the global south. IDAN, Ideas Africa Network, is its branch that focuses on economic development challenges across Africa. With a secretariat in Accra, But the African work, policy work, is led from Dakar by Dr. Ndongo Sambasila, who is our host today and whom many of you know. He is supported in this conference by two of his colleagues. Our head of research and policy from Asia, Dr. Fawa Sial, and our head of policy and research for Latin America and the Caribbean, Dr. Martin Abeles. Fawa spoke yesterday, Martin spoke yesterday, and will speak today as well. Fawa is a Pakistani, Martin is Argentinian. This is only to make the point that ideas is truly spread out across the continent and the global south. In Africa, our team is located not only in Senegal and Ghana, but also in South Africa, Egypt, Kenya. We will be hearing from one of the co-founders of Ideas, Professor Jayati Ghosh, later today. Professor Ghosh is co-founded Ideas together with the likes of Tandika Nkandiwiri, who is a very well-known late progressive scholar from Malawi, as well as the likes of Jomo Kwame Sundaram, a Malaysian scholar who has had a misfortune or fortune of carrying names of two of Africa's leaders, Kwame Nkrumah, that is the Kwame side, and Jomo Kenyatta, that is the Jomo side. That is how Pan-African Jomo Kwame Sundaram's father was and forced him to become as a Malaysian. But this is the nature of Ideas scholars across the global south and its partners, friends, comrades from the global north. So a little bit about our work on finance and development. Much of our work over the last 3 years has been on debt and development, the financial architecture, and climate finance. We've published many papers and books, and many more are on the way. Those interested in our approach to economic development and our thinking can visit our website www.networkideas.org and our new and emerging websites www.idan-africa.org. Your Excellencies, Ideas and IDAN, as well as many of the people gathered here, are here not only on a one-off basis to attend this conference, but they are here because they are interested in and committed to contributing, if asked, to this solution of Senegal's debt problem. So here you have many collaborators, partners, and a wealth of expertise and knowledge. Your Excellencies, thank you once again for making the time to formally open this conference and to share your thoughts and solidarity with us. Once again, you are welcome.
Merci, Dr. Charles Abougré, directeur exécutif de Ideas, les idées en français, qui regroupe justement des économistes du développement à travers le monde. Et avant le Dr Ndongo Sambasila, directeur Afrique d'Ideas, je crois savoir que nous avons M. Jeffrey Sachs en ligne pour également son intervention Je rappelle que c'est un économiste de renommée internationale, directeur du Centre pour le développement durable, professeur à Columbia University et justement un grand défenseur du développement durable. Il a fait ça en ligne pour justement participer à cette conférence. Alors, s'il y a encore des réglages à faire, je vais demander à Nongo de venir nous présenter les délégations qui sont présentes avant que Jeffrey ne puisse entrer en ligne. Alors, Nongo, merci juste de nous dire qui est là et pourquoi le choix du Sénégal pour cette conférence. Et sans doute, après, vous pourriez revenir dans votre présentation sur le thème.
Donc, bonjour à toutes et à tous. Donc, commencer par saluer les autorités ici présentes. Monsieur Daouda Ndom, ministre de l'Enseignement supérieur, de la Recherche et de l'Innovation. Madame Marie-Rose Khadifatou Faye, secrétaire d'État auprès du Premier ministre, chargée des relations avec les institutions, porte-parole du gouvernement. Madame Yacine Fall, qui bientôt nous rejoindra, d'après ce que j'ai entendu dire, ministre de la Justice, garde des Sceaux. Monsieur Abbas Fall, maire de Dakar. Monsieur Aïb Dafé, secrétaire général du PASTEF et président du groupe parlementaire PASTEF à l'Assemblée nationale. Et je salue également toutes les autorités ici présentes, tous les collègues partenaires. En fait, le choix du Sénégal s'explique aisément. C'est un pays qui vit une crise de dette, comme on a pu le voir depuis hier avec les interventions des collègues venus d'un peu partout. Et donc, cette crise de dette a été révélée par ce qu'on a appelé des dettes cachées. Et on peut voir à travers la presse internationale, chaque semaine, un article sur la situation de la dette du Sénégal. Auparavant, il y a eu d'autres pays qui ont été, en tout cas, sous les projecteurs. On a vu la Zambie à partir de novembre 2020, par la suite le Ghana. On a vu ce qui s'est passé au Kenya, et maintenant c'est le Sénégal. Pour dire que les crises d'endettement ne sont pas simplement dues au choix politique interne ou au choix de gestion interne, mais ont une caractéristique systémique. Et donc là, on a fait le choix, comme Charles l'a dit, Charles Abu Ghraib. IDEAS a longtemps travaillé sur cette question de dette et de réforme du système financier international. Et en mars 2024, déjà, on était à Accra pour parler de la crise de la dette des pays du Sud de manière générale et de ce qui s'est passé au Ghana. Et donc là, c'est tout naturellement qu'on s'est dit qu'il faut venir au Sénégal, essayer de partager les expériences. Et donc, on a essayé de mobiliser du monde. On a des gens qui viennent de l'Asie, du Pakistan, du Sri Lanka. On a des gens qui viennent d'Amérique latine, Équateur, Argentine. On a aussi des compatriotes du continent africain. On a des gens qui viennent de la Zambie. Je vois ici mon collègue Dr Guiré Chelwa. On a des gens qui viennent du Kenya, du Ghana, de l'Éthiopie, du Mozambique et beaucoup d'autres pays africains. Pour dire que c'est un rassemblement global pour partager les expériences en matière de gestion des crises de dette et aussi des relations avec le FMI. Et donc, comme on a pu le voir dans notre, en tout cas, comme on a pu le montrer dans notre conceptuel, nous pensons que l'austérité n'est pas la solution. L'approche FMI du Fonds monétaire international est catastrophique pour le développement économique. Et donc, il faut avoir une approche autre que l'approche FMI. Mais en même temps, avoir une alternative à l'approche FMI ne veut pas signifier une austérité auto-imposée, c'est-à-dire une austérité à la FMI, mais qui serait imposée par les autorités elles-mêmes. Et donc, du coup, ici, on a rassemblé des gens qui ont également pensé à des alternatives. Qu'est-ce qui pourrait être fait pour qu'on tourne définitivement le dos aux crises d'endettement? Et cette solution existe. Ce que l'on requiert, en fait, c'est l'écoute politique et la volonté politique. Mais ces solutions existent. Ces solutions sont à portée de main. Et donc, dans ce cadre, on a eu, comme Charles l'a rappelé, à élaborer des documents. Donc, une douzaine de documents qui sont disponibles en français et en anglais, des policy briefs que nous mettrons à la disposition des décideurs politiques, mais également des médias et du grand public, pour que chacun puisse regarder ce qui se passe dans les autres contextes, mais également quelles solutions concrètes pourraient être envisagées dans le contexte du Sénégal. Et donc, peut-être que plus tard, dans le cadre de ma présentation, je pourrai revenir un peu plus en détail sur ces papiers. Je pense que le professeur Sachs est là. D'accord, merci beaucoup. Donc, je vous passe la parole.
Merci, docteur Mambo Sambasila. Et nous allons accueillir Madame la ministre de l'Intégration africaine et des Affaires étrangères, Madame Yacine Fall, ministre de la Justice plutôt, garde des Sceaux, ministre de la Justice. Et Jeffrey Sachs, me dit-on, est en ligne. He is online, Professor.
Greetings.
So you're welcome in Senegal, so you have the lead right now. Can you deliver your speech, please?
Thank you. Excuse me. Well, thank you very, very much. It's a great pleasure to be with you. I want to start by saying, as your president and prime minister and minister of justice know, I am eager to provide any kind of help in any way for your wonderful country. My wife and I have been guests in Senegal many, many times during the last 25 years, and we're very grateful always for the friendship, your hospitality, the warm people and culture. So first, let me thank all of you very much for that. I've been asked to speak just a little bit about Senegal's economic situation, and I am very happy to do that. In general, I am a very big believer that Senegal, and I would say in general, Africa, the member states of the African Union, have the opportunity for very rapid, sustained economic growth and development in the next decades. In other words, I believe that your national policy realistically should be based on a rapid growth scenario. And by that, I mean that Senegal should aim for sustained economic growth of at least 7% per year of the gross domestic product. But it should be possible even to achieve rates of growth that are higher than that. I view Africa as in a moment of economic takeoff. If the leadership of Africa can work together to ensure that the entire continent moves forward as a unified economy. In other words, I'm a very big believer in the Africa continental free trade area. And I basically see Africa's prospect in the coming years to be like the growth that has been achieved in China and in India. And the reason I use those two countries as comparisons is the basic fact that China, India, and Africa all are giant continental societies. Each has a population of about 1.4 billion people in total. And if Africa can behave like one unified economy in the same way as China or India, then Africa becomes a very large marketplace that can support a tremendous amount of industrialization, a tremendous amount of specialization, and a tremendous amount of innovation, leading to a long period of economic development. Of course, we can't assume this to be automatic. Africa was left by its colonial heritage as 55 separate economies, and putting them together is not simple politically or even administratively, but it's very important to do so. The simple fact is that no country in Africa, not even a Nigeria or a South Africa or an Egypt, countries with large populations, has a large enough economy on its own to be able to sustain rapid economic development of a diversified economy. The only way that even the big countries can manage would be as part of an Africa-wide success story. And for a country like Senegal, with around 20 million people, this is even more the case. Senegal, of course, will trade with Europe, with China, with Latin America, with the United States, but it must trade as well with the rest of Africa. And Senegal, as a great port, also must connect through infrastructure, of course, with the Sahel, but more broadly across Africa. And so the unity of the African economy is critical. If it can be achieved, then there's no real barrier for Africa to achieve the kind of growth rates that China and India have demonstrated. Of course, China's economic growth has been the most spectacular in the world during the last 45 years. After China made its reforms, it achieved economic growth of around 10% per year for more than 40 years. The economy grew roughly 40 times during that period, because every 7 or 8 years, the economy doubled in size. India has been growing at around 7% per year. That means that it takes about 10 years for India's economy to double. But India is now accomplishing that on a consistent basis. Because these are giant economies, they are industrializing, they are developing digital sectors, they are innovating, and this is the basis for rapid growth. It's Africa's turn. Africa has been growing at 2 or 3 or 4% per year. It had a very difficult period with the COVID pandemic. Now it faces still more supply shocks coming from the American war on Iran. By the way, a war that has no justification whatsoever and is doing harm to the rest of the world. But even with these shocks, the underlying potential for Africa's growth is very, very strong. And it's Africa's turn. Because with the Continental Free Trade Area and with the visionary leaders like your own country's leaders, and combining your vision with that of other parts of Africa, it's now possible to envision an Africa-wide rapid period of growth. Now, to accomplish that is basically to mobilize large-scale investment. So all growth fundamentally is investment-led growth, because all investment means is building up the productive capital of the economy. And when it comes to high rates of investment, which Africa and Senegal need, let me emphasize four kinds of capital that must be accumulated. The most important by far is human capital. Senegal's most important investment will be the education of young people. The government program absolutely needs to be based on universal quality education for every child to complete at least an upper secondary school education, with a significant proportion going on to higher education. It is the human capital that is the most important asset of any society, period. More important than oil and gas or any other asset that a society has is educated people. And because Senegal has such a young population, make sure you don't delay in getting every child in school. And I would like to see every child have some kind of digital device so that they're not only in school, but they are also learning online, that they are absolutely able to be an active part of the digital world and receive online education and skills because they have access to the digital world as well. So that's the first kind of investment that is the most important. By the way, how to pay for that, I'll come back to that. But the basic idea is that even if the government has to borrow in order to finance some education outlays, when today's young people reach the labor market, they can pay a modest payroll tax to help repay the education that they received, because their personal incomes are going to be boosted significantly by the quality of their education. So if you educate the children today and 15 years from now, they start paying a 10% payroll tax, that will finance their education. The second kind of investment that is critical is the physical infrastructure. And that includes, of course, the power system, because electricity will be vital, and a lot more electricity than Senegal now produces, because transport will be electrified, cooking will be electrified, buildings, of course, will be using electricity, and your industry will use electricity as well to a larger extent. Senegal will become an exporter not only of fossil fuels, but also of green hydrogen. Senegal has tremendous renewable energy potential. In addition to its hydrocarbons, you have a lot of sunshine. You have wind